Hello, this is Professor James Strickler, and this is a course in American government. This lesson is from Unit 6 about interest groups and political parties. It's Lesson 14 about how the major political parties differ. And this is the final lesson of Unit 6. In this lesson, you'll learn about the ideological differences between the two major American political parties, and also about the demographic differences between them. So, as we discuss how the two major political parties differ, we're going to use a little bit of color coding to keep you straight. On the slides that follow, when you see a element mentioned that is highlighted in blue, that's referring to the Democratic Party, while one that's highlighted in red refers to the Republican Party. Another color scheme we're going to use to keep things straight is slides that have a yellowish background are about the ideological differences between the party, while those with a greenish background are about the demographic differences between the parties. So let's begin by discussing the ideological differences. And we're going to talk about 5 different aspects of this. Now, please remember, ideology is a concept that's been discussed several times in this course. Ideology refers to someone's worldview, what they think the world should be like, and therefore what they want to use the powers of government to accomplish. When talking about ideology in the two major American political parties, the labels liberal and conservative are often used. Democrats are referred to as generally speaking being liberal, and Republicans generally speaking as being conservative. Now, don't assume that this is true of every single Democrat, every single Republican. There may be liberal Republicans and conservative Democrats. This is going to be true of all the different ideological differences and all of the demographic differences that we discuss. While they may apply broadly to people who are members of one party or the other, they don't necessarily apply to every individual. Now, what does it mean that the Democrats are liberal and that the Republicans are conservative? Well, remember back to an early lesson in this course where we talked about modern liberals and the sort of basic things that they believe in. That's what it means, is that Democrats generally follow that, while Republicans are generally modern conservatives. So, as modern conservatives, Republicans believe in things like the wisdom of history, following tradition, the American dream, that kind of stuff. While liberals tend to be focused on, let's make people freer by making them more equal, that sort of thing. The next difference then becomes how these general perspectives of liberal and conservative are applied to sort of practical questions. For Democrats, the big focus becomes, does this make people equal or not? Now, when they think of equality, Democrats are generally thinking of what I can describe as comparative equality. In other words, how I'm doing is simply a matter of comparison to somebody else. So think about this in economic terms. The way you decide whether or not somebody is doing well economically, you don't ask them absolutely, well, what do you have? Do you have enough to eat? Do you have clean water? Do you know, things like that. It's not in absolute terms. Instead, it's comparative terms. Look around at the other people about you. Do you have more or less compared to them? If somehow there's too big of a difference, it's considered unfair, and it's something that they generally believe should be corrected in some way. In comparison, Republicans generally focus in their conservatism on economic freedom. The idea that people should be allowed to make their own economic choices, to buy and sell what they want, for what price they want, etc. And the belief is that from economic freedom will then come prosperity. Accompanying these focus, the focus, of the Democrats on equality and the Republicans on economic freedom, then comes their views of responsibility. For a Republican, they believe, this is a very fundamental idea, they believe in individual responsibility. So, whose fault is it if you are doing well or poorly in your life? For a typical Republican, the fault is your own. If you want more, then you need to roll up your sleeves and work harder. And if you're unwilling to do that, then you probably should be satisfied with less. They also believe that those differences create incentives that help society to be better by holding people individually accountable for their own talents and energies and efforts. It's going to create a incentive for people to work harder and do better. It will benefit society as a whole. But essentially down at its roots, who's responsible to take care of you? You are responsible to take care of yourself. Democrats, on the other hand, tend to believe in what we can call collective responsibility. If you aren't doing well in life, or you are doing well in life, it's probably not your fault. You got lucky or you got unlucky. Somebody came in and gave you opportunities, or someone denied you opportunities for whatever reason. Maybe they were your family, so they helped you out, or you're a race they don't like, so they discriminated against you, whatever it is. And so your failures and successes are not your own. Instead, it's society as a whole that's either holding you back or helping you out. This then leads to a different view of government. For a typical Democrat, because they believe in collective responsibility, that whether you're doing good or badly, it's the society as a whole's fault. They believe then that the society as a whole has a responsibility to take care of you. So they need big government to do this. They need big government to kind of force the people who have been getting lucky and doing better to give up some of their resources to help those who have been oppressed. That's the basic idea of it. On the other hand, Republicans, who tend to be conservative, believe in limited government, or small government, in other words. They believe that people prosper justly through their own individual choices, and so the government should get out of the way and let them make those choices. Now, if some people suffer as a consequence, that's probably their own fault for not doing what they're supposed to. But even if it's not, that the other people shouldn't be penalized, or in other words, forced to help them out, just because they're being successful. Leave each person to do their own thing. The government should generally stay out of the way. Now, these ideological differences can then be applied to the broader world also. Because Democrats generally believe in this notion of collective responsibility, they look at our relationships with other countries in the same way. A way to think about this is, who keeps America safe? Well, we're kept safe by working with others, by being nice to them, by entering into treaties and agreements and coalitions and that kind of thing. Just as within the country, people are kept safe and prosperous through collective responsibility, they believe in the world as a whole. Countries will be kept safe and prosperous through collective responsibility, working through things like the United Nations. Republicans, on the other hand, because they tend to believe in individual responsibility, when they look at our country's place in the world, they say, okay, who keeps the United States safe and prosperous? The United States keeps itself safe and prosperous. We can't really trust other people to take care of us, other countries to take care of us. We have to take care of ourselves. So how does this then equate to these terms that I have on this screen of dove and hawk? Doves are about peace. They're a symbol of peace. And so Democrats think, hey, let's be nice to everybody and we'll have peace in the world. While Republicans look around the world and say the only way we're going to keep ourselves safe is by being big enough and tough enough that people leave us alone. In other words, we're the bird of prey, we're the hawk, we're fierce, and therefore others will be nice to us. And that's how we'll keep ourselves safe. So these then are basic ideological differences between the parties. In other words, how they see the world and therefore how they think the government should act. Now, notice the background of the slide changed to green. We're going to be talking about their demographic differences between the parties now. First demographic difference is that the Democratic Party tends to attract people of color, while the Republican Party tends to attract people who are Caucasian, or in other words, white. Now, again, this isn't always true. You will find African Americans who are Republicans, you'll find white people who are Democrats, etc. But on average, if you see someone who's a member of a minority race in the United States of America, odds are they're going to be a Democrat rather than a Republican. Not always, but odds are they will be. Odds are a woman is more likely to be a Democrat, and a man is more likely to be a Republican. Now, let's think about this for a moment. Why would people of color and women more likely be Democrats, while white men more likely to be Republicans? Well, it goes back to this question about individual or collective responsibility. If you look around and you say, hey, I need help from the government because I think that I've been unfairly treated in some way, and therefore society which treated me unfairly should help me out, then you're probably going to be a Democrat. Well, what groups are most likely to see things that way? Well, it's groups that feel they've been treated unfairly. Members of minority races, women, that sort of thing. Well, if you look around and say, you know what, I've gotten things on my own effort. Society hasn't held me back. I just went out and worked hard and I got ahead. Then you're more likely to be a Republican. And what groups are more likely to feel that way? Whites and men, who in the past historically have been the ones that have had the most achievements in American society. Next demographic difference is that people who are unmarried or childless tend to be Democrats, while those who are married and have children tend to be Republicans. Again, this may be traced back to this difference of attitude between them. If you are part of a partnership, responsible for children, committed to that, then you're probably looking at yourself as working hard to help this situation. And you're viewing yourself as succeeding in working in it. While if you're unmarried, childless, kind of on your own, or matter of fact, if you're unmarried with children sometimes, you may be looking around for opportunities. You may be thinking, well, I haven't got anyone to help me, I need some assistance, that sort of thing. You'll be looking to the government to help. Next difference is between urban and rural. If you live in a big city, you're likely to be a Democrat. If you live in the countryside, you're likely to be a Republican. And let's go back to this idea of responsibility. People in the countryside are a lot more likely to be self-sufficient, while people in big cities are constantly involved with other people. They aren't raising their own food, for example. They have to go buy that from someone else. So they see things much more intertwined and collectively responsible than somebody out on a farm, for example. And the final demographic difference is that Democrats tend to come from the poorest part of society, who are looking for the government to come and assist them, and the richest part, who have extra money to help with that assistance. While the middle class tends to be Republican, and the answer is really kind of obvious. They have worked hard to get ahead and take care of themselves, and the last thing they want is for a government to come and take some of their money and give it to somebody else. They want to be left alone with what they've earned. And so they tend to buy into this individualistic idea of the Republicans and vote for that party. Okay, that completes this lesson. Now let's review what we learned in it. Which of the following is an aspect of democratic ideology? Is it individual responsibility, or being a hawk in foreign policy, or focusing on comparative equality, or being a conservative? Democrats tend to focus on the issue of equality. Which of the following is an aspect of Republican ideology? Is it collective responsibility, or is it being a dove in foreign policy, or believing in limited government, or being a liberal? Republicans tend to believe in limited government. Which of the following is an aspect of democratic demographics? Are Democrats more likely to be unmarried, rural, male, or white? They are more likely to be unmarried. And what is an aspect of Republican demographics? Are they more likely to be women, middle class, urban, or people of color? The correct answer is that Republicans tend to be from the middle class. That completes this last lesson of Unit 6. The next lesson will be from Unit 7 about the judiciary. It'll be Lesson 1 about the common law.